our deep dive this week, celebrating 30 years this year. It is, like I said, the number one all-time movie on IMDb right now. It's ahead of The Godfather, I believe, is still number two. Yeah, number two is The Godfather. Number three
Is
is
it
The
ahead of
Dark Knight.
Oppenheimer?
Number four is The Godfather Part 2. And number five, 12 Angry Men, has slipped into the top five on the IMDb 250. Oppenheimer, uh, my eyes don't see it anywhere. I don't know.
Ooh, buyer's remorse.
I don't know where it is. I will say, I did see number 15 on the IMDb top 250 right now is Dune Part 2. So we got that going for us.
Oppenheimer's number 91.
So when Dune Part 2 wins Best Picture, then it will drop to 91 next year.
There you go.
Everyone realizes it's overrated.
The Shawshank Redemption, that's what we're talking about. Directorial debut for Frank Darabont. This is gonna be a great conversation. We all love this movie. Is there anyone who doesn't love this movie? Well, I think we do. We'll talk about that.
Well, we'll have to see in a few minutes upon rewatch. That's why we rewatch these movies.
It is, and then to overanalyze to a fault. Yeah, I'm the one that picked this one. It is. I think I have it number 20 right now on my top 100. It is this beautiful movie of Andy Dufresne wrongfully accused of murdering his wife and her lover, and him finding his way out, redeeming his life, redeeming himself, and redeeming others along the way. Based on a Stephen King short story, which it doesn't feel very Stephen King-esque, but it is. This is the first feature film that Frank Darabont made. I actually looked up, he only has directed 4 feature films. The last 15 years, he's been too busy making Walking Dead. He's done 4. 3 of them are Stephen King adaptations. In Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, and The Mist. And the 4th one, I irrationally love way too much, and that's The Majestic with Jim Carrey. But yeah, it's interesting. This is a movie, yeah, like I said, it's number 1 on IMDb Top 250. And I think I saw this sometime around when I became aware of how high it was on the IMDb Top 250. I didn't watch this when it came out. It was maybe 10 years later that I finally got around to watching this one, which is kind of the life of this movie, right? It was kind of a flop when it came out. No one really noticed it. It had enough fans to get, I think, 7 Oscar nominations, but didn't win anything. It was nominated for Picture, Actor, Adapted Screenplay, Cinematography, Sound Editing, and Score. Actor to Morgan Freeman, not to Tim Robbins, which is interesting to think about. That was it. And then in only something that could happen in the 90s and early 2000s, this movie played at least once a day on TNT. And when people were channel surfing, they would come across it and they would watch it. And everyone started falling in love with this movie. And that's how it got the reputation as being one of the greatest movies of all time, was people finding it on cable. And that doesn't happen anymore. But anyways, it's such a good movie. Like, the characters in this are amazing. The story is great. The dynamics between Andy and Red, I mean, it's one of the great bromances you could have. It's just a great movie, right? This is. It's hard to describe, go into it, because every part of it is just, this is just a solid, great movie. And it's one of the reasons why I love 90s movies, because this is a 90s movie and through and through. And that's one of the things I love so much about it, is I love how the 90s just kind of framed movies. And this is
okay. Yeah. I mean, I watched this for the first time. I probably was in high school or something like that. And yeah, it was probably because of how it was on the IMDb list. And I remember immediately I put it in my top 5 of all time. I think it was as high as number 2 at one point. And that's, I mean, maybe a reflection of the fact that I'd only seen maybe 1,000 movies at the time, not 6,000. But it is one of those things that You watch it and you just know that you are watching something great, and there's never a scene that dips at all. Like it is a fully fleshed out 140 minutes or whatever, and it's fantastic, and it's so relatable, and everybody loves this movie. You could show it to anybody who watches any kind of movie, and they're going to fall in love with the characters, going to fall in love with the setting, because it's just so flawlessly told. And I don't know how much you attribute that to Darabont as a director, or Darabont as a writer, or as to Roger Deakins or the actors, or what. But I mean, everything about it is just so spot on. And I don't know. I mean, I have this on my Stephen King adaptations list. My use of alcohol in movies, inanimate object characters, and movie pets. I mean, it could be a lot of on a lot more lists, because I mean, there's so many interesting characters and so many memorable lines and so many memorable things about the movie. The one thing I will say now is that the last like maybe 20-25 minutes I don't really care about anymore. Like when you first watch a movie the first couple times, you need that the closure of those last like 20-25 minutes, but now I don't really feel that anymore, and I kind of just like stop paying attention at that point. That's the only thing that keeps it from being still like a top 20 movie for me, is that like I just don't, the last 20 minutes are kind of like whatever, but I still get it, and you still go through it, and you can, and I still showed, like I just showed this like maybe less than a year ago to my girlfriend, and she was just like, yeah, that's like one of the great movies. Of course it is, because everybody loves this movie.
I like that point. The last 20-25 minutes, it's not that they're bad. It's just that they're almost like ancillary to everything else that's going on, right? It's like the movie could have easily ended with the warden tearing down the poster and him staring down the hole, and just cut to black and end it. Like you could have done that. I think it still adds to it what's left, but it's not. You could take it or leave it. It's like, yeah, this is how the story ends, and it's a beautiful ending, but you don't really need that beautiful ending because everything leading up to it was so great too.
Yeah, it's like a Clint Eastwood ending to a movie or something, where it's like it probably goes on a little bit too long. It's not like you mind it necessarily, but it's just like you don't necessarily need that extra time.
It's not what the movie is about. Like even though that's what the title references, is the title is about the redemption. Well, the redemption happens then, but you don't necessarily need to see the redemption feel. Yeah, Zach. Now you've been referencing the fact that you just rewatched this and you may have changed some thoughts on it.
Yeah, first of all, Adam just texted me, by the way. Here's what he says. That is a terrible take from both of you. And I actually agree with what Adam says. The last 30 minutes of this movie are the best part. I mean, you cannot have this movie without that. What is the point of both of these characters' journey through 19 years in this hellhole without that redemption at the end? And the way that it's structured, you don't expect, now we've all seen this movie a million times, but the first time you're watching it, you think that Andy's going to kill himself. You think that, the rope is missing, and you think he's all down dejected because Gilbello's died. And there's no way you can anticipate what happened. One of the things that I was struck by watching the movie again, even though I know the ending intimately, because for me, that's the best part of the movie, is just how surprising that must have been to viewers in 1994. That is like the Sixth Sense, probably, of any movie ending in that era. It's not, necessarily like a twist ending, but it is something that you don't see coming at all. There are hints about it. And apparently there's a deleted scene somewhere that does show when Andy first gets his little pick and he's picking his name. There's a chunk of rock falls early on. They decided to put that later in the movie because had they shown it earlier, then you would have gotten the gist that he was going to get out. This is a movie that I have to say I would not have picked for our deep dive. I felt like it was too populist. It's obviously everyone loves this movie. For me going into it, I thought, okay, well, it's a Terry pick. Terry was in his mid-30s like Frank Darabont was when he first saw the movie in 1994. So, I can understand the appeal. you go into these movies and it's like you wanna, I remember like, okay, all right, is it totally realistic that this thing would happen? And the corny ending and the music and the voiceover we've seen a million times before. This movie absolutely grabbed me from start to finish, and I have to say it is basically a flawless movie, and I'm ashamed that it is not in my top 100. It's got to be my number one of 1994. Are you kidding me? I mean, this is absolutely beautiful, transcendent filmmaking.
Better than Speed.
And
wow.
I don't know if it's better than Speed because I have such a personal, deep down relationship with Speed. But I got to say, the movie's on TV all the time. When I watch, it's also on Pluto TV. When I watch it, I usually watch the last 30 minutes because, unlike what you guys just said, I think that's the best part of the movie. I had not really sat down and watched the whole movie in its entirety for quite a while, at least 10 years. I got the Blu-ray recently, and the Blu-ray is wonderful. There we go.
Pack.
Oh,
Absolutely.
the 2-pack.
The Walmart 2-pack.
Nice.
I love it. The Frank Darabont. I'm glad they didn't
Amazon.
include the Mist.
I should have brought mine with me. I watched the DVD, and I have the DVD copy that still has like the black clippy thing on the side. That's how
I love
old
that
the
era.
DVD is. Yeah.
Love that era. This movie was like a rediscovery for me, and it's it's why we do these things, right? Is it perfect? No, but it was.
You just said it was.
It kind
you
of
said
is.
It was a flawless movie.
Well, it's interesting. Okay, so let me back up for a second. The question that I bring up watching this movie is more about one's own film taste than the movie itself, which is that the movie is beloved. Everyone loves it. And yet, for me, I guess it would be better if it wasn't so popular. I like to discover movies. I like obscure, esoteric French movies that no one's ever seen. I apparently like ones with John C. Reilly in them, apparently. But this movie is so beloved and everyone loves it. And there's not a single person who would ever sit down and actually not like this movie, that it makes me question the movie a little bit. And it makes me question my own sensibilities about the movie. That being said, if there were fewer people that watched this movie, I think it would lose its power, because the power of this movie is by getting it out to audiences, getting it into libraries, letting the public decide. And they decided, because this movie was a box office bomb, and it's a great story about how it was resurrected basically and beloved way more than at the test screenings and the original theatrical run. I mean, this is a movie that plays well on cable. It's a movie that you don't have to sit through for the whole movie for it to have emotional resonance. And yet it is a great movie from start to finish. Another paradox that I wrote down kind of watching this. So I don't know if I'm not being fair to the movie because so many people like it. And that's just a me thing, which I'm sure it is. The other paradox I wrote down is, going into this movie, I really wanted to be cynical. I'm like, I wanted to say, okay, where's the female representation in this movie? Well, there is none. Why don't we see more African-American prisoners? We could ask all those questions. Though I think to some extent those are fair questions. But at the same time, great movies activate higher thinking. And the higher thinking in this movie is about morality, about how you live your life and treat others, and of course, most famously, about whether you choose to hope that tomorrow is going to be a better day or whether you expect it to be worse. It's get busy living or get busy dying. I mean, it's corny, but it's so true, So in spite of the higher activated thinking that you have watching this movie about morality and life and all that, those went up. The cynicism went down, which is curious. I was not cynical watching this movie. This movie absolutely enraptured me. And so I can't really make a lot of pithy, witty side remarks about how, this scene's unrealistic and this part didn't age well, because the movie is just so good. And that's a testament, I think, to the power of the best movies, like The Wizard of Oz and like Casablanca and like, Almost Famous and Sideways. You forget about being funny and pithy and witty, and you just live in the world of this movie. And that's what this movie did. And this movie was absolutely magical, and great pick, Terry. I don't know what we're going to really say to this movie to already add to the discourse about it, but it is an absolutely tremendous movie. And I do wonder in 1994 what it would have been like had we been of a certain age watching it. When Uncut Gems came out in 2019, I'll never forget, I got the text from Todd that said, you got to see this freaking movie like right away. Stop what you're doing. Stop the presses. Go see Uncut Gems. I feel like we would have had a similar conversation, maybe over the landline phone in 1994. Go see this movie pronto, because this would have been the Almost Sideways winner, the Pinot winner for 1994. With all due respect to Pulp Fiction, which we're going to deep dive later this year, and certainly it will maybe impact how I think about Pulp Fiction, but this movie is absolutely tremendous. So there you go. Cynicism washed aside.
The one thing about Shawshank is that it could have come out in any era and it wouldn't have changed. Like, this could have been made almost the same way in the 40s and 50s. It could have been made the same way now, and it would still play the exact same. It would be the same movie because it's just that timeless, and the story is that engaging, and even the sets and everything like don't look outdated at all. It doesn't look like a 90s movie necessarily. It looks like it could have made in the 70s or something. I don't know. It's one of those special movies that absolutely does not age a second.
Well, part of the reason for that timelessness is because they're all secluded in a prison. So there's no opportunity for them to wear the trends from the 60s. The closest you get is with the Gil Bellows character kind of sporting the James Dean sort of look. But other than that, and other than, I guess, the posters, which we'll talk about, the movie is quite literally timeless, because it doesn't exist in any sort of culture or cultural reference. When they get to the outside world, they talk about how they're afraid of what happens. So I think that adds to the timelessness and universality of the story and of the movie.
It's a movie you experience, like you don't necessarily watch. Like it is such a lived-in movie. I think this goes to what you were saying, Zach. And it's why it was such a big hit on cable, is you can pick this movie up at any point, and after a scene or two, all these characters. And then you're just living with them, right? You're just experiencing everything with it. This would have been, I could have seen this being a great TV show, right? You could have easily made this, and it wouldn't have been a Prison Break, right? It would have been
although the structure of Prison Break is sort of the structure of this. You just know that he's trying to break out.
right, true. But it would have been much more calm and methodical of you just experiencing life with these characters in the prison, and I think that's why Todd, what you're saying about the ending, and Zach, I also kind of agree with exactly what you said. The ending is so great and perfect, and it's what everyone knows about this movie. If you think of this movie like it'd be a TV show, like this could have been like a 5 or 6 season TV show, and the last 20 minutes is the series finale, the last episode. I mean, it's like you're watching MASH and saying, well, MASH is great because of the goodbye at the end of the last episode. It's like, no, it was great because of everything you experienced leading up to it that made that moment matter. That's what Shawshank Redemption is. That moment doesn't matter unless you've had the 2 hours before of getting to know these characters and understanding them. And that's what the movie is. And that's what makes the payoff great, but you almost don't even need the payoff because leading up to it was so great.
Well, I think you're trying to compliment the movie, which you're right. I mean, the movie is wonderful to watch for the first 95 minutes or whatever, and it's great and all that. I agree with you. But I think with the ending sort of speaks a little bit to the afterlife and subsequent popularity of the movie. The reason why it's number one, I think, is because of the ending. And listen, I'm not going to attempt to psychoanalyze the American movie fans, but I think when people watch this movie, they see themselves in it. I think in maybe a similar way a little bit to It's a Wonderful Life, I think a lot of people struggle in this country, and they struggle with jobs that they don't like and relationships that are dysfunctional, and they don't have enough money, and they feel like they've made mistakes in life. They have regrets, like Red talks about in his parole board speech at the end of the movie. And I think this is a movie that absolutely advocates for hope, and it advocates for a vindication at some level. The idea that you're going to go through, 30, 40 years of suffering, maybe not in a prison, but there are times and days that feel like a prison. But at the end of it, it's going to be worth it. And you're going to get to that point where there's the ocean and there's the boat and Andy and Red reuniting. And that's, I think, enough fuel for a lot of people in the world to get by. And you know what? The movie's, sure, call it corny. This is not the type of movie that the Darden brothers would ever make. A lot of filmmakers would say this is a complete romanticizing and sentimentality. But for a lot of moviegoers, that's why we go to the movies, is to have aspirations and have dreams and see how a movie can change what we think about and perceive our own lives to be and our purpose in life. And I think the movie is deep and profound. The other thing that kind of struck me a little bit about what you were saying earlier is it's a prison movie, but it's not really about the prison break, even though that's an integral part to the movie. The movie's absolutely about the relationships that are fostered inside the prison. And in a way, that is more important than the escape. You don't think of this movie as a prison escape movie in like you would like Birdman of Alcatraz or The Great Escape or something like that. I mean, the movie is, I think, a lot deeper and goes in a lot more kind of cerebral directions than those movies do. And again, just a movie that, to its credit, was interested way more in that than some simplistic sort of genre piece.
Well, I think more, as many people that relate to Andy and Red also relate to Brooks, and how he doesn't want to get out and doesn't know what he'll do when he gets out. And I think that speaks to it a lot too. And I was watching this last night, and it gets to that point where they're talking about being institutionalized and what Brooks is going through. And my wife's like, that was a deep topic for 30 years ago, right? That wasn't something you necessarily talked about 30 years ago. And that I think that's another thing that makes it so such an important movie too.
Yeah, you know what I was reminded of? So I wrote down the line when Red talks about the prison walls, and he says, first you hate him, and then you get used to them. Great line, by the way, that I did not remember. Great speech. But I thought a little bit about Ed Harris in The Truman Show. Ed Harris in The Truman Show, he talks about, well, would Truman really want to escape from that world, right? And that's like, you're right. That is such a profound point. We think of prisons as places that barricade people and separate them out against their will. But this movie had the audacity to say that when you get used to that institutionalization, it becomes a buffer and it becomes routine. And I think we like routines in life, even if we pit ourselves against them. And it's scary to go against those routines. And that's a fascinating element of the movie too, that I think a lot of directors, certainly directors in 2024, would have had a more critical eye to, about maybe, I don't know, the prison pipelines in our country, and obviously the socioeconomic issues that involve imprisonment. But just that was fascinating too. And I don't know. I mean, it's a really deep movie that there's a lot of things that you can talk about that maybe 1994 very few people were willing or able to articulate.
I don't know how much would this change if it wasn't set in like the 40s? Like if it was set in the 90s, like what would the movie be different? Because I feel like that takes a little bit of what Zach's saying into account. Is like this was a completely different time when the movie was set. That's why like some of these issues aren't exactly like that apparent.
Well, the poster would not be Rita Hayworth. It would be like Michelle Pfeiffer.
Well, yes, exactly. Yeah, the one cultural reference in the movie. Yeah.
Farrah Fawcett. It'd be the Farrah Fawcett.
Farrah Fawcett. There we go.
That's a good one.
I think one of the things when you set something in that time, I mean, it's one of the reasons why like World War II movies work so well too. It feels like this like picturesque, quintessential, timeless moment.
When you take all technology out of the equation, so that none of that is a problem, and that's why like these kind of movies are timeless, because there's never going to be something that's like, well, that wouldn't work because of this anymore. Because
and it's like it makes Brooks's case so much more drastic, because he's been in prison since, I think he said 1907. He saw one car when he was a kid, and now he has to avoid them everywhere he goes. Like that. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. Brooks is not winning Stickman, by the way. Just a spoiler alert.
No.
But what I would be interested in is, I want to know what a cynical person thinks about this movie. I want to know someone who, very much is on the side of like Ken Loach or the Darden brothers or kitchen sink realism. because another thing that I wrote down, and I wrote this down at the beginning of the movie, so my opinion changed as I got suckered into it. But then I think about the end of Monster. You know, Charlize Theron says they got to tell you something, and I agree with that attitude too, right? Like they got to feed you something that's going to get you through the day. And of course, that movie is so like dark and depressing, but in a way, it's sort of about the same thing. It's about a character who wants to have hope in spite of all these very real and violent obstacles that are surrounding her. And then I think another thing that just makes this movie so interesting too is the passage of time. You know, I'm a sucker for movies about passage of time. I'm a sucker for movies where characters have to like look back at things and reflect on things. So in preparation for this movie, I watched the Eddie Murphy, Martin Lawrence movie Life. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that or heard of it. It's a movie that is, I guess, kind of like the black version of the Shawshank Redemption, even though Morgan Freeman is also black. But it's about these two guys, these bootleggers in 1932 who get caught and imprisoned. And they basically have almost the same story as Red and Andy, except they don't really escape from jail. They just kind of live in this prison in the South for about maybe 50 years. And it's a really fascinating movie, and I encourage you guys to watch it. It's not as good as a Shawshank Redemption. It's a 3-star movie, but it has some unique parallels to it. And one of the unique things about it is that in 1999, it was a funny movie. And then watching it today, it's not funny at all, because basically they are imprisoned for extreme racism, and the things that happen to them are pretty appalling. But because it's Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence, and I guess that's the way the movie must have been financed, it's like a comedy for some reason. But it's a fascinating document. I thought I was going to watch it to make the hip trendy point, hey, life is better than the Shawshank Redemption. It's not. There's an interesting sort of adjunct to it. And it's a reminder that movies that cover long periods of time are pretty interesting. And this is a movie that does it, I think, very compellingly and realistically. It doesn't shove it in your face. The characters age, I think, very gracefully and naturally. And it doesn't do the thing where it's like, okay, Andy has excessive makeup on and he suddenly looks like, Al Pacino in The Irishman or something like that. But like, well, that's just the way Al Pacino really looks, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I like movies that go across a time and space. And yet another movie I wrote down was The Bridges of Madison County. This movie came out around the same time, Bridges of Madison County, which I don't think Terry has seen. He's got to watch it next year, I guess. But that is also a movie that covers a long time in people's lives, and there are regrets that are made and things that you second guess about the decisions that you made in your life. And there's narration in that movie too from Meryl Streep. And I'm a sucker for those. I mean, any movie that shows that trajectory, that long trajectory over a period of life. My number one movie last year was like that too, Past Lives. I'm a sucker for it. And this movie does it as well as any movie has ever done it, The Passage of Time. Adam says he agrees, by the way.
There we go. The aging is really subtle. It helps that Morgan Freeman has looked like he's 60 since he was 20. I think he's related to Greg Oden, because they both look like they're ancient since like they've been in the front of a camera.
Well, his son is in this movie as the one character who brings who retrieves the knife or whatever, or the rock hammer.
Interesting.
Like he's and so it just shows how old Clint was, but he didn't necessarily look as old as he does now. But he's still like he's still old. He's been in that like 40 to 80 range for a long time.
Yeah. And the only other passage of time you get is the changing of the poster. Who would Nicolas Cage play?
Well, he was up for Andy at one point. I see. There were a lot of people that were trying to be cast in there at one point. Nicolas Cage, Johnny Depp, Charlie Sheen, Tom Cruise.
Missed it, Terry.
I missed it.
There was in like the late 80s,
Tom
early
Cruise,
90s,
baby.
He could have been Hadley. But I mean, it's Andy, right? I mean, that's the one he fits in best in this.
I like the Nicholas Coppola as Tommy. If we're going 1970s,
Nicky Coppola.
Nicky Coppola as Tommy, and Nicky Coppola as Tommy with the sideburns.
There's a version of this where he's Hadley.
Yeah.
Today he could be the warden. Kinda.
He doesn't do those kind of roles that much. Like he was in like what was it, Snowden? Yeah, that was the one where he had a role like that. sort of.
Oh, I haven't seen Snowden. Who would
I don't
90s
know.
Giamatti play?
Well, hold on just a second. About Cage for a second. I think Cage
Yeah.
would have been toxic for this movie. I mean, this is the rare case where Cage wouldn't work really in any. Can you imagine Cameron Poe as Andy Dufresne? I mean, that just would have been comically bad. Put the bunny.
He has a
back
lot of
in the
movies
pot.
where he's really subtle.
But I'm saying 90s Cage in that era, maybe a little bit after 94, would have been a toxic and just completely catastrophic casting decision. So I'm glad that Nicholas Coppola was not in this movie.
Who would 90s Giamatti play? I said fat ass.
He wasn't fat, though.
That's true. He wasn't that fat, but
I wrote down Ernie, who's like the little con, who's just like around, and I also wrote down the projectionist.
Yeah, I projectionist.
oh, I like it.
Or maybe
Yeah.
no. Sorry, he's the guy who takes the picture when they find Andy's pickaxe at the river of sewage.
He's the one that actually takes the picture.
No,
Yeah.
he's the one in the picture holding the pickaxe.
Yes, that's it. Well,
No.
usually Giamatti's behind the camera in these kinds of movies, but
Well, he could be the guy who's trying to get the highway contract or whatever with the pie.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
the money.
There we go.
Very
All right.
subtle.
Who would Beth Grant play?
Well, there's no
Or she
women
is
in this movie. It's a problem.
She is in the 1954 Foodway somewhere. She's either the manager guy or the cashier or the woman whining about bagging correctly. Like she's one of those three characters.
Or the bank teller? But I was thinking
That could be,
the
yeah.
supermarket too. Or
Obviously.
is she the landlord at the halfway house?
That's not bad either. That's some real Beth Grant territory.
That is a role in this.
What does Adam think this movie is about?
Wait, you skipped the Gretchen Mole should have become something.
Oh, I forgot I was adding that in. I gotta add that in here. Okay. The Gretchen Mole should have become something category.
It would obviously have to be Andy Dufresne's wife, Rennie Blaine, is this her only movie? It is. Only movie. She was a fashion model for Mademoiselle magazines. Rennie Blaine.
I wrote down I guess I don't know who the actor is. I wrote down Tyrell. He's the guy who Mac Miles. He was the guy who works in the infirmary and tells him that that fat ass died. He was only in 12 movies or 12. He has 12 credits. He was also Orderly Hector in The Green Mile. But yeah, that guy should have become something. I feel like. I mean, that could easily have been like, oh, that was Ving Rhames or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good call. I forgot to do this one, so I don't have anything for that one. But that I like both of yours. I'll take one of each of them. What does Adam think this movie's about?
Okay, well,
Anybody?
I have this written down. It's a sequel to Caddyshack because there's the golf pro, but he's like supposedly murdered by a caddy while banging some banker's wife, and then he gets represented by Hilary Swank. It's all about a golf pro. So I mean, golf pro that was
at the
Chevy
Shawshank
Chase, right?
Country Club.
Yes, the Shawshank Country
Maybe-
Club. And then his redemption, maybe he beats the charges or something, and then he comes back and wins a tournament.
Maybe he shanks his putts or something. Maybe his name is Shaw. Maybe he's related to Terry's wife.
There we go. Just bring it all full circle.
I just said that it was a prequel to Red Dawn Redemption or a sequel. I don't know. Red Dawn Redemption takes place in the Old West, so I don't know if this is before or after that. But it's one of the five.
Redemption.
Red Dead Redemption. What's Red Dawn Redemption? That's the movie.
Red
right?
Dawn is the movie with Patrick Swayze.
So it's the sequel to the movie that didn't have the sequel called Red Dawn Redemption. So it's a sequel to the non-existent sequel. Okay,
I just remember
got it.
killing a lot of horses in that game. That's
All the listeners, this is Zach's brain on the box.
Highest war of the movie. We'll go to Zach first.
All right, I'm going to be a little unconventional on this one, but I like it. I'm going to go Rita Hayworth. because Rita Hayworth is kind of a unique movie star. I don't really know a whole lot about her, but I do know that her most famous movie was Gilda, which apparently Todd has seen. I thought it would have been a good come to the
It's
stable.
Mickey
prior to
Rourke's
this
favorite movie of
episode.
all time.
Is it? Well, the more you know. Yeah, so I like that it's Rita Hayworth. I mean, who else could it be? I think Jane Russell. I mean, that's just that's just a little bit too on the nose. Katharine Hepburn. I don't think those comics are watching the Philadelphia Story. Okay. I don't even know who else there. Audrey Hepburn. I mean, no. There's not really a good replacement star for the great. What's her name? I just completely forgot. Rita Hayworth. Yes.
Get busy
Now-
drinking. All right, my pick for highest score. I'm going Morgan Freeman. I mean, let's just get to this here. Morgan Freeman works not only because of how great of a performance he gives, but his narration adds so much to the vibe of this movie. We're watching this movie, and my wife halfway through goes, "See, that's why he narrates nature documentaries." And it's just because he has that calming voice that just lures you into more of what's going on. And I don't think it would have been the same movie if it hadn't been Morgan Freeman narrating your way through it. So Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, I mean, they're a lot of these characters are kind of irreplaceable actors. I have I guess I'll go with Bob Gunton as the warden, because there's something about that guy that every time I've ever seen him since, I think, oh, that's the warden from Shawshank, like, because he is so that character. He is so just slimy and evil. Just the look on his face is just like the look of something that is despicable, and that's hard to do when he's got like 150 credits on IMDb, so he's been in a lot of stuff, but he's always going to be the warden in Shawshank to me.
The Bill Paxton Memorial worst performance. I couldn't find what his name actually was, but it was the roll call guard. The one at the end who's calling roll and is all pissed off that Andy's not out there. It's like, I got a schedule to keep here. Come on. That's and there isn't a bad performance in this, but that character is kind of wasted because it's the first time you really see him, and it's like in this critical moment. And yeah, so the roll call guard, that's my worst performance. Todd.
I don't know what his name is either.
I know, right? You got no name. You have no
say
chance.
like, you're gonna come out here, I'm gonna chew your ass or something. I don't know what he says. I have William Sadler as
Oh, come on.
what's his face?
Commander Overbeck.
Haywood. Yeah, Commander Overbeck. He's just a little off. He's obviously funny and he's good too. But I just feel like that character is just a little. He takes it a little bit too dumb. There are a couple of times when I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like that's him making a choice and not actually the writing. So I'll go with that. Like you said, no bad performances.
This is what, 4 years after Die Harder?
Yes.
Zach, worst performance.
I did come up with a bad performance. I went with Bill Bullender as Elmo Blatch. That is an objectively bad performance. When he's saying he's using a real heavy Southern accent. It is. It's a bad performance too. And he's talking about, that's the best part. She's fucking this golf pro, and she's married to some other guy, some hotshot banker. I don't know what he. Yeah, you're right. It's from a different movie. He obviously saw the word prison movie and killer or something and took it in his own direction, which is great. More power to him. But he is in the wrong movie, and that is a bad performance. And that scene really takes you out. I think the whole Elmo Blatch thing is kind of a not my favorite part of the movie. But his performance definitely does not help that.
The minor character triumvirate of the Amazing Larry, Big Tim High Roller, the Charlie Duke Ticket Taker movie maker, and the Matt Damon What Movie Are You In award. What do you got?
Okay, so watching it this time, it was so abundantly clear that the Amazing Larry role in this movie is Floyd.
Yes!
Played by Brian Libby. Every line that he has is so sarcastic and funny. Like, and he's the one's like, he's like, Red, I do believe you are talking out of your ass. Or when he says Count of Monte Cristo, and he's like, it's Cristo, you dumb shit. You know, like I mean, every single time that he opens his mouth, I'm just like, I love that character, and I never really thought that before. So this is a good rewatch for.
I've
that
never
character.
even noticed that character before, and he's in like every scene.
Well,
And he's just in the
him and the guy
background.
from Fargo. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, those guys are together in every scene.
But he's got like 10 lines, and that's it.
Yeah, and they're
Yeah.
all funny.
Which guy from Fargo?
The Grossman, whatever his name is, or
Oh,
Is he the guy
Stan
that looks
Grossman?
like Tom Sizemore?
Stan Grossman. Yeah, Skeet. That's
Oh, yeah. I thought he looked like Tom Sizemore.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, I mean, he's also the guy. He's in the Santa Claus, right? So the cop or something. Or
Oh gosh, yeah. Okay.
Anyway,
continue.
minor character who caused the movie to happen. It is Hadley's brother, who dies and leaves him money.
Oh, that's a
and
good point.
That's what
That's a very
eventually gets Andy in with the guard and gets him in with the warden and blah blah blah. And my Matt Damon, what movie are you in? I mean, other than Blatch, who is kind of the obvious answer, I'll also say Gil Bellows as Tommy. And that's sort of by design that he comes in as like a completely different energy than everybody else. But he's in and he's out, and he doesn't. I'd always, it was a little curious that Red says we liked him from the absolute start when he is nothing like any of them. And so I'll go with Gil Bellows, kind of, but it's really Blatch.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Zach, you're next.
I also had the same Matt Damon. That's why I didn't go with Elmo for my Matt Damon. I had Gil Bellows as my Matt Damon award. But for all this exact same reasons that Todd said. What I will add is I remember Gil Bellows. I don't associate him with this movie. I associate him with Ally McBeal. He played Callista Flockhart's love interest on that show, her childhood sweetheart, Billy. Who was married to Courtney Thorne-Smith on Ally McBeal. I'm sure you guys are big fans of that show. My movie maker was Mozart, made a great choral piece that landed Andy 2 weeks in the Slammer, but easiest 2 weeks he ever did. And I think it brought about some changes musically with the entire prison because they were eventually playing Hank Williams later on. When I go back up on 19, I'm bringing my entire collection, Johnny Cash. My minor character award, let's see. So are we not counting Brooks as a minor character? Is he too major?
No, if we recast him, it doesn't count.
Okay. Let's see. Minor character. Yeah, let's go with okay, this is a character based more on reputation than actual screen time. I'm gonna go with the golf pro. I mean, listen, this guy is a golf pro. That is his name. That is his reputation. That is his brand. That is his identity. I want to know more about his golf skills. If the definition of a minor character is someone that you want to know more about, I want to know how much more of a pro this guy was. Is he like, Helen Hunt in Dr. T and the Woman sweeping in as a golf pro, becoming the love interest of a major character in the story? Or is he more like Scooter McGavin, already mentioned earlier in this podcast nicely by Todd? Or would he be a character McGavin in the inimitable 1996 movie Tin Cup that we're going to recast? I don't know. He shanks a lot of putts probably, but I just love that he's referred to as the golf pro. He doesn't have a name or identity. He's just the golf
Glenn
pro.
Quentin. He is.
Well,
they say it during the trial.
I know him, and I'll always know him as the golf pro. That was the only name I ever knew him by.
My favorite line delivery of the whole thing is, caught in bed with some golf pro, greased them both.
For me, my Amazing Larry is Floyd. Like I said, I didn't even notice him before this time watching it, and yeah, he's awesome and is always there. And he reminds me of another character from another movie and another actor, and I haven't been able to place it. And eventually I will, and I'll text you guys, but I can't figure it out. Anyways, my Matt Damon, what movie are you in, is Tommy, which we already mentioned. My Charlie Duke, Ticket Taker, Movie Maker. I was trying to go back and figure out the actual names, but it's the guys who carved their names into the wall before Andy did.
Oh,
I couldn't
Charlie,
go back.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I was trying to go back and figure out what the names were. I thought it was going to be a trivia question, and of who else carved their names in Andy's wall. But yeah, those guys, they're the movie makers, because that's what gives them the idea, and then the thing and the thing and tripod of depravity, stickman, douchebag, and most punchable face.
Uh, douchebag. I'll go with the manager at the grocery store, or whoever the guy that was getting on Brooks's case for not double bagging it. Listen, I respect double bagging, but he just had a bad attitude about it. Punchable face. Let's go with any member of the sisters. I think that's safe ground. And then Stickman, I think I'm going to go Glenn Ford and Gilda.
I'm next. Tripod of depravity. My stickman, obviously, it's a golf pro. My douchebag is Boggs, and my most punchable face would have been. This is like the closest I thought of when you said someone in this cast is from Apollo 13. 1946 DA, played by Jeffrey DeMunn. Yeah, he's the flight director in Rocket Man, which is about as close as you get to Apollo 13. Like, it's a parody of all space movies.
So another stickman, I wrote Blatch because Tommy had talked about all of the, he even said, he talked about all the people he stole from, the people that he killed, and the women he fucked and whatever. So Blatch, I apparently was a stickman, although there's not a whole lot of evidence of it. Haywood is my douchebag, because especially after he wins the cigarettes and stuff, like, he is a complete dickhead, and he stomping
fat ass by a nose.
Fat ass, talk to me. Chubby fat ass, fifth on the front. And my most punchable face, I have the Moresby prison baseball player who Andy's doing his taxes, because he just looks very punchable. He's sitting there, he's like, damn right, I had to pay for that shit or whatever.
Yeah, I thought about putting Haywood. He almost was my punchable face until I thought of the DA. But yeah, when Brooks has a knife to his throat, when your reaction is, yeah, that kind of tracks. You know that.
It's Red. He's like, what the hell did you do to him? He said that to Haywood. Like, what'd you do to set him off? Like, it's obviously your fault. Best
scene in the movie. I go first on this one. It's the scene on the rooftop, the bucket of suds.
Yeah.
It's such a great scene, and even seeing Hadley drink up, ladies. It's everything about that scene. Him stepping out. There's so many great scenes in this movie, but that's the one I'm going to go with. And how they frame him sitting up against a wall with that little smirk on his face. It's just perfect.
It's obviously a great pick. I have Brooks and his whole epilogue thing, because it's the voiceover and how heartbreaking he is talking about it, but you do get this full scope of what he was going through in I don't know, probably 2 or 3 minutes or so. And you just really get that character so much in that part, and that is probably the most emotionally resonant part of the whole movie. So Brooks, his whole thing after he gets out, that's probably the best part of the movie for me.
Zach?
Well, true to form, I have to defend the last 30 minutes of this movie. I was not prepared to do this. Everybody loves the last 30 minutes of this movie, I guess, except for you guys. I would go, if I can't pick that whole part of the movie, I guess I would specifically go with when Morgan Freeman goes to Buxton and reads the letter. First of all, one of the all-time great movie letters. Hope is a good thing, maybe the best thing. I think about that letter a lot. And I love in particular the way that Darabont has that moment kind of go slow. There's it takes at least a minute or two for Morgan Freeman to get up the hill, and he's walking around. He looks for the rock, and he looks around like he's going to get caught. And I love that. That's just also a compliment to the movie. I love this is a somewhat rare example of a 2-hour plus movie that needs to be that long. It is, and I love that it's slow. I wouldn't call it even slow at times, but it builds up so much emotional momentum in the movie. It needs to take a lot of time, and that sequence is a good reflection of that. I think another director would have made that sequence go by quickly. They would have thought, okay, we got to get to the beach quicker. Let's get through this scene. But the reading of that letter is absolutely mesmerizing. It's, I think, maybe the greatest, maybe next time Mount Rushmore of great letters in movie history. It's one of the very best letters ever written in movie history.
Flaws, outdated conspiracy theories. I think that this is one where I think it has one of the biggest flaws you could have. And that is, how did the poster remain up after he escaped? Like that's like one of the biggest movie questions ever. Like, how is the poster still up after he's gotten in the tunnel?
It's hanging there.
Right, but it's attached on all four corners.
I mean, it was obviously only attached on the top because he had to get behind it every time to go work on the tunnel.
Yeah, he probably had it mastered by then. But that's like one of the great like questions in movies is how did this happen? How is this a thing?
Well, see, that was a long tunnel too, and so he must have gotten incredibly dirty every night after crawling through that tunnel to work on that tunnel. Like, that I've
How
never.
much time did he spend back there figuring out which pipe to hit, which pipe to go through?
Yeah,
that was more my question. Is like, how long did it take him to build that tunnel? And had he been sitting on that for a while? Like, was he waiting to do it, or had he just found his way to get to the pipes? Like, I felt like his tunnel that he concocted was not that long of a tunnel. I think he had been waiting there for a while to escape from the prison. And I think Tommy's death was the catalyst that made him finally decide to leave and abandon everybody. Maybe. I don't know.
It just so happened that Tommy's death and him getting out of the hole coincided with a thunderstorm, so he could hit the pipe.
No, he had been working on the tunnel for a long time. It's just I don't know. I think he was more frustrated with going in the hole because it delayed him getting out, because he's like, I already figured out my hole, But it's just so, I don't know. I mean, because when they show him working on the wall, he's like looking over his shoulder like every couple seconds. So, but he had to be in that hole like probably 30-40 seconds from being able to get out every time he goes in to chip it away at it at all. It's just, I don't know. It's a little, I mean, I guess he did 20 years to do it, but.
Well, but then you see that the night he escaped, no one noticed he was not in his cell until roll call in the morning. So he probably eventually got a lot more comfortable being in there.
Yeah. Yeah, that also means he never slept.
Right? All right, the one thing that's always bothered me about this movie is that the movie poster is a still that never takes place in the movie. Like, this is one of those things where you have those moments that it's like, oh, it's like a perfect shot. Like, right, that movie poster, it's a perfect shot of him with his arms at his side, the rain raining down, his prison uniform. Also, by the way, the movie poster is one of the most incredible spoiler alerts in like movie history if you've never seen the movie before, because I mean, the still from the movie poster is in the last 10 minutes of the movie. Come on. But it's not even in the movie.
It's an interesting poster. It's a very quixotic poster. It makes you think it's like maybe a Terry Gilliam movie or something. Like some adventurer is fraught with a bad plan or something like that. I like the poster, though. I have to say, I certainly like it better than the terrible Blu-ray, Photoshop bullshit.
That's disgusting.
So I don't think there's any way Andy was able to memorize the Bible like he's Will Hunting or something, where he's like able to like not only spit out a random verse, but also know the reference for the verse that the warden says, especially when he cut out half of it. Yeah, cut out the middle of every page of the book. And there's
no way he well read. He could just be well read in the Bible. What? I think that's conceivable.
And they memorized it. I don't know. I mean, but he's a banker. It's not. I mean, if you memorize the Bible, you probably are working.
Maybe he was raised in a religious household. I think it's possible.
It's a bit of a stretch. Just like the same way, it's a bit of a stretch that Andy has entrusted Red with the name of the city that much that it could be decades before he gets out. And he's like, "You remember the name of the city, right?" And he doesn't say it. but I heard the title an hour before watching the movie, and I didn't even remember it. So how the hell is Red remembering it potentially 15, 20 years down the line? I mean, that's a lot of trust to put in one guy, just to remember one passing conversation you had with somebody.
I wanted to know how long the bus ride was from Portland, Maine to Fort Hancock, Texas.
Yeah.
It's a long one.
That's a long ass bus ride. Well, let's wrap this up. LVP, MVP, and then we'll get to quote of the day. Todd, you get to go first.
My LVP is, just like circumstantial evidence, like that is always the LVP in movies like this. And my MVP is Tim Robbins, because I think he is fantastic in this. He's my best actor winner for 1994. I will never understand how he was nominated for an Oscar. It's his demeanor and his just like his whole performance that makes the movie as relatable and interesting as it is, because he is sort of an enigma, and then you kind of love him by the end. So he's my MVP.
Nice. Zach?
Okay, my MVP is buses in 1994 movies. We got a beautiful bus that Morgan Freeman is on at the end of this movie. We got Tom Hanks waiting for a bus, and of course we got the notorious bus 2525. Also, in all seriousness, though, the Thomas Newman score is iconic, unforgettable, used memorably in the Brokeback Mountain trailer. I think actually I saw that trailer before I saw the Shawshank Redemption, so now I associate that music more with Brokeback Mountain. But that music is of course great, and of course the Roger Deakins cinematography is great in that movie too. LVP, the Oscars, just in general. I did want to somehow bring up a natural way to bring up that Tim Robbins also thought that Robert De Niro should have won Best Supporting Actor this year, so that was another way that Andy Dufresne was right about the world.
My LVP is bureaucracy and how long it took to get updates to the library. Well, now I'll just write.
Update that library. You're the spouse of a librarian, Terry. Speak truth.
Only took 6 years.
Only took 6 years to get a $200 check. And then my MVP, 1994. I mean, the movies in 1994 were amazing. I know we'll deep dive more of them, but the fact that this was in the lineup and wasn't even sniffing Best Picture because of Forrest Gump and Pulp Fiction, it just is a credit to how great 1994 was. But the other MVP I'm going to say is, especially this time of year, being able to do taxes, that is a hardcore MVP. Andy Dufresne, and then I mean we're getting close to tax day. I mean having the ability to do your own taxes, that's pretty amazing. And I envy Andy Dufresne. So
yeah, I mean you learned that if you had to buy a gun, you can count that as deductible. Okay, my quote of the day comes from the warden when he sees that the cell that Andy lived in is no longer occupied. He says, "Lord, it's a miracle. Man up and vanish like a fart in the wind."
I've got a couple here. One is Andy, or both of them actually are Andy. I think a man working outdoors feels more like a man if he can have a bottle of suds. I think that speaks to everybody. And one which I feel describes my attitude towards this podcast often is, how could you be so obtuse? Is it deliberate?
Yes. That's a good one.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to draw this podcast to a close. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you are still listening, we've been going at it for quite a while, but I think this was a pretty awesome deep dive. We'll be back at you next week with another episode.